You're listening to Tony Graham here on Bingang 91.5, and it's time for Tech Talk with Matthew Dickerson. Good afternoon, Matthew.
Good afternoon, Tony. Great to be chatting to you again on Tech Talk.
Yeah, Matthew, I reckon you should get off your backside. I reckon you've been sitting still at your desk for too long. So what's the solution to that, apart from maybe a few thumbtacks on the seat?
That might be one solution, but might have some other ramifications.
Yes, I've done that.
There is some research being done at the moment because we have been sitting down a lot more during the pandemic, a lot of people working from home, of course. There's been a small sensor created that you could actually just wear on the back of your neck. And it's got some origami-like folded wires that essentially monitor how much we move. So there's some major issues that are being caused by people. Apparently there's more than 100 million people in Europe that have got musculoskeletal disorders just from the year 2020. And that's basically coming out in things like neck and shoulder pain. And that really comes down to the fact that we're sitting down working for so long. But, and I won't hopefully get his name right here, Zhangbao Yang at the City University of Hong Kong has developed a small stretchable sensor, and it's powered by piezoelectricity, effectively the movement of that actual sensor. And while that movement occurs, that is enough to actually power this little device and let your computer know that you are moving. So that's great, you're moving around. If you don't move for a certain amount of time, it will come up on your computer and let you know that you haven't moved for a certain period of time, therefore prompting you to move. Now, there are some wearables that are doing similar sorts of things. Apple Watches, Fitbits, that type of thing will give you a warning if you haven't moved within the hour, get up a bit. But this is more accurate because it's really on your body, testing whether or not you're actually moving around. And I think this is fantastic. It's all well and good to say I should remember to move around, I should get up and stretch every now and again. But sometimes when you're really involved in a certain project or you're really working on something, or if you're just sitting there stuck in a Zoom meeting, sometimes you can be focused on that so much that an hour's gone by and you haven't really moved at all. So this is a great reminder to do that. So it's a reflection we live in.
Well, if I was an employer, I think I'd have them on every station to keep people awake.
Well, you probably are more alert if you do get up and move around as well. So it's a good point, Tony.
Yes. Now, I know that it's interesting watching what's going on with EVs. What's even more interesting, though, is how there's been a little bit of a focus on the ute market, particularly in the United States, and they're trying to break into that market, and I reckon they're probably doing it already. What do you think?
Well, they're getting there, Tony. They're getting there. And I suppose, in particular, the ute market was a focus of the last federal election because our Prime Minister told us that electric vehicles were going to wreck the weekend and you couldn't have a ute in an electric vehicle, which obviously is complete and utter rubbish, if I can be so harsh on our Prime Minister. But there's a new electric vehicle that's been announced and it's going to, I think, really grab that ute market. I think there's going to be a lot of utes coming onto the market. The Toyota Hilux, the Ford Ranger at the moment really lead the way in utes in Australia. But there's a new ute called the Canoo, C-A-N-O-O, the Canoo pickup. And it's basically a bit like the old Combi, the Combi vans in the front of it design. It still has an impact zone there, not quite as bad as the Combi van where your feet were basically at the front wall. But it's really a modern take on a ute. And they've really thought of everything they could possibly think of to make this ute modern. It's a dual cab ute. Inside it looks like a luxury motor vehicle. But when you get to the back, it's got a few nice little things that are quite clever. It's only fairly short in the back to keep the overall ute at a reasonable length. But instead of the back tray folding down, the back tray folds out and down, so you can actually have a longer tray if you needed to carry something, long bits of timber, that sort of thing, if you're a tradie needing to carry some long pieces. But then it's also got some components underneath the tray that can stick out to the side where you can load things up, or use those as steps to step up onto the back of the ute when you're loading up some various components. It's got racks on the top of the actual cabin. Again, you can use that step to load up or to climb up onto there. And it can actually have a canopy that's put over the whole thing if you like to go out camping. And the canopy, again, folds down small when you get out to your camping spot, folds out at the back to give you enough room to fully lay down. So there's a whole range of innovations that are happening like this, Tony, that are trying to make that ute market quite attractive. There's 4 power points on the actual ute, so you can plug in various things. Again, you've got a big battery there, so you can plug in various devices, whether they be your tools that you're using or whether they be things like a microwave or a hairdryer that you want to use while you're out using it. I'm not sure how many tradies use hairdryers these days, but there's a variety of things you can use because, again, you've got that big battery you can use. So pretty exciting for the ute market. The canoe, I think, we'll see on our shores within a year. But there's other utes that are coming out as well. And I think keep an eye on this market, Tony. I think there's a lot of movement to happen here.
I reckon there is. Matthew, are you ready for your digital health passport? That's really going to be happening as we come out of COVID, isn't it?
Absolutely. And Qantas obviously is one of the keenest companies to get the digital health passport up and running. And there's a flight that's just come in from Germany to Darwin, a repatriation flight. And it's the first flight that Qantas has used that's actually used the digital health passport. So it's an app that you put on your phone. And effectively what it does is it will connect to legitimate health providers and either say, here are the results of a recent COVID-19 test, or here is proof that this particular person has had the COVID-19 vaccine. So when you get on that flight, part of checking into the flight, here's my ticket to show that I've bought a ticket on this particular flight, and here's my Common Pass app. Common Pass is the name of the app at this stage, to show that I've got that negative result or I've got my vaccine. So for airlines, this is really important. You're not going to get international flights happening until we get enough people vaccinated or people with proof of their negative testing or a vaccine to be able to start that international flight program up and running again. The ultimate aim for Qantas at this stage is to use Common Pass in the short term, but their objective is to integrate this with their Qantas app so that part of the Qantas app in your Qantas app, and there's my proof of my clear COVID-19 status. So great idea. Where it goes in terms of long-term standard, Tony, that's the really interesting part. IATA is developing an app as well. This is one that Qantas, the Common Pass app, is one that Qantas is using in particular. And we know that the federal government is also working on having some sort of digital vaccine passport. Which one we use in the end, I don't know. I'd probably be backing the government one. But in totality, I think the important part here is we're looking at ways to be able to have that proof to get the world operating the way it used to operate.
That's quite interesting. I think that will certainly help the situation. And I noticed that Singapore is looking at opening up a bubble with Australia, and they probably will use that. But I've got a high-tech rodent trap solution for you, Matthew. I know you've got rodents in the shop there in Dubbo. They're a bit of a problem. But you've been able to get control of them because, you've used a bit of high-tech. And I believe what this is you've made up a bait whereby you mix up 2 parts of cement, 1 of flour and 1 of caster sugar, mix it all up, put it on a tray, and before you know it, all the rodents die from constipation and whatnot. So they generally disappear and try to find water and go away to die. So there's a little tip.
Thanks, Tony. I appreciate that tip. The interesting part is there are a whole range of technology and chemical solutions that are being brought forward for the mouse problem that's going really across the nation at the moment. So it is interesting, and it's great to see so much innovation. I love to see people coming up with different ideas. Feeding a mouse cement, which is what you're talking about. There's a few people I know that need to harden up a little bit as well, Tony. Maybe they could take a bit of your poison.
Yes, well, you've got to have a bit of innovation, particularly when mice bait is very, very scarce.
Yeah,
Anyway.
That's exactly right.